Shanti. Warm welcome to Raj Yoga Essentials. Apologies for the delay. And we're actually going to begin right away with a reflection. So I invite you to be seated comfortably. The body comfortable but well supported so that you can be alert and experimenting with eyes open in a natural way, so no strain. And patiently bringing my sense of focus into the present moment. That this moment is the most important one. This time is the most valuable. And how will I use this time, this moment? Choosing to use this time to focus completely on the self. To experience myself in a deeper way, in a more timeless way. In a spiritual way. Feeling that that kind of experience is actually what time is calling me to do. And so I go into the inner laboratory of my mind. The place where I can experiment with thoughts. Explore a different quality of thoughts than what I do day to day. Ordinary thoughts, worldly thoughts. Here I want to experiment with completely different thoughts. A different quality of thoughts. Sacred thoughts. Carefully chosen thoughts. Spiritual thoughts. And I begin to realize I have so few of those thoughts known to me. I will need some knowledge, resources. What are spiritual thoughts? What are sacred thoughts? That's what I'm here to discover. Shanti. So if any questions come up, feel free to chat. Type in the chat box if there's something that you want to ask. I know there's a question I was supposed to explore, I think. I can't recall what it was, but perhaps it will. Here we go. I think it's being hunted down. And I think it connects actually to what we're going to explore. The question is?
So the soul is sharing about if our soul is perfect, untainted, and unbothered by life trials, and me as a human being has many self-limiting doubts, are we saying the practice of meditation helps us get closer to our true soul self, and those limitations brought on by human life fade away? Can we wash away our preconceived notions of ourselves in this life to reach our soul? Can I ever live a life free of my mind's beliefs?
So, I don't know if you heard that question. It was being spoken, but it's being posted in the chat box and is very connected to, it's actually exactly what Raj Yoga is intended for. So I hope that we'll be able to touch on the answer as we share. Even if we just look at the title Raj Yoga, again, this is the body of knowledge that we use in this spiritual university. And I always am struck by this word Raj. Both words are very powerful, Raj and Yoga. But Raj meaning sovereign, meaning royal. And again, the intent behind this study is to secure that state of happiness and peace that we are seeking, and feeling that this has more to do with the self. My happiness and peace has more, if not everything, to do with the self, the inner state, and not much really to do with the outer state. We, of course, have arrived at a place where we believe the outer state is the source of my peace and happiness. So in the question you'll see that it talks about the mind's beliefs, and that's a very deep belief. Even if intellectually, theoretically, I might say something, but if I look honestly at my emotional state through the day, it's revealing. I still deeply believe the outer world, what's going on, and what people are doing is determining my peace and happiness. And that's the state of a slave and a beggar. Raj means master or king. So this move, master or king, means not reactive, not really controlled. My inner kingdom of the mind, my inner state of feelings is not controlled by the outer world. Now, for some reason, when people hear that, I'm not sure why, they think that means I don't feel anything at all. As if the only feelings I can have are those that are created by the outer world. I don't know why the sort of the conclusion that souls leap to. Of course we can still have feelings. Peace and happiness are feelings. Love is a feeling. Having those are wonderful feelings. It's just not controlled by the outer world. It's under my control, so that I can have loving feelings even in challenging times. And there's a reason that's important. The source of our happiness is so dependent on how we show up in the world. Not what the world is doing, but how do I show up? I heard a beautiful story today that a soul was sharing. It's obviously a time of strain, perhaps, on many of our systems. So the bank they had contacted, as a homeowner, she had contacted the bank, had to make some new arrangement regarding the financing of some port. The details are not important. Everything was confirmed, signed, sealed, delivered. And then a couple of weeks later, the bank contacted her and said they'd made an error that wasn't helpful to her, that actually made things more costly for her. And so she really felt it was important to express the idea that it was all signed, it was their error, they should really honor their original agreement. And, she proceeded and things worked out. But what she shared stuck with her was she didn't enjoy forcing through her side. I mean, she felt it was appropriate to share, to highlight this concern that it was their error, but the qualities, to not have that impatience or that. She even recognized the soul she was dealing with was probably the one in the middle, simply the messenger, but to still be very respectful. If she stopped being respectful, this bothered her. It wasn't so much the content of the conversation, but how she showed up in the conversation. That is the source of our happiness. Because what Raj Yoga acknowledges is that we, the human spirit, I, the soul, have a remarkable capacity for dignity, for very pure, elevated character. That is our innate state. And yes, it doesn't seem at this time like that's there at all, that we're bothered by a lot of things, but that's our innate state. And our source of unhappiness is that we've lost that innate state. We've lost that pure character. That's the only source of our sorrow. And we've created a whole structure around us to try and avoid looking at that main issue. So, Raj Yoga kind of acknowledges the elephant in the room, says, here is what's really bothering you, is you lost yourself. So let's see if we can offer a practice that will get yourself back. And yes, it will probably require letting go of some beliefs. Because again, that whole structure I created to avoid seeing the elephant in the room, to avoid seeing that the problem was me, includes a lot of beliefs. And so I'm going to have to let go of the beliefs in order to acknowledge the real problem. One thing that I've had the very interesting opportunity to experience in the last few weeks is just through one of the responsibilities I've had. There's been a lot of videotaping of the self. So this is in a fitness capacity. So a lot of videotaping happening as these programs are delivered online for fitness. And it's a very sobering experience to see a video of yourself. I don't know if you've ever had that pleasure, but to see a video of yourself, and it's very concrete when it's physical movement, it's very clear. And to watch the self, not with judgment, but with clarity, and get a chance to really see what you're doing is very useful and sobering. And this is so much a part of Raj Yoga on the spiritual level, what I, the soul, am doing. And again, I might be operating under the influence of beliefs, believing it will get me to the destination of peace and happiness. And because there's not clarity, really not seeing that those beliefs may not be getting me there. And even if I get to the point where I said, okay, I can see that I need to change my beliefs and I've got some new ideas and I'm working with them, the habits created through honoring those other beliefs do not go away easily. So even though I think I might be doing something different because I think it, in practical I might be doing the old stuff, expecting new results. So it's a very honest process, change, and working with new ideas. So that's a lot of stuff to reflect on for the self. But coming back to the essence, restoring the royal nature of the soul. And for that, there's 3 stages. There's many ways you can look at it, but tonight the feeling was to look at these 3 stages that we could think of as as quiet, and then peace, and then silence. And it's in silence that a lot of that transformation that was presented in the question happens. That yes, the old kind of falls away and the original is restored. A lot of that happens in silence. So quiet, and then peace, and then silence. So the first one, quiet, looks at who and what I am not. The second one, peace, we go deeply into who and what I am. And the third one, silence, looks at who I belong to. So it's very, very simple. But again, different from my habits or beliefs. So it's going to take a lot of patience and honesty to actually experience this. So starting with quiet. Probably you've chosen a space which you think is physically quiet. You won't be interrupted. So we often think of quiet as minimizing the physical noise and stimuli around us. So we want physical quiet, no sounds. No sounds, no interruptions. That's kind of what we're looking for. And that's the most superficial level of quiet. We're talking about something a little deeper than that. Quiet is where the usual thoughts that are roaming around in my head stop roaming around in my head. Doesn't mean there's nothing going on in my head. It's just that those thoughts are not roaming around in my head. And that's an inner state of quiet. So we can even, people often share, I can even go into solitary confinement where there's no stimuli and still there is not quiet in my head, which is why most find solitary confinement crazy making. There is still that stuff in the head. So what will help me to get into just quiet? So let's try a little experiment. I want you to imagine that you are an actor in a play. And you come to the theater and you're very aware of who you are outside of the theater. But as you come to the theater, you start to put on the makeup for the role that you're going to play. You put on a costume. And, even then, you're still acting yourself. Even though you have makeup and costume, you still have the personality of yourself. But it's quite remarkable and astounding the moment that you walk onto the stage. It's like you become a different person. And so you're on the stage, you become the story of the costume. And all the props on the stage, you act as if they belong to you. And the other actors on the stage, you act as if they're related to you. Now the whole time internally, you are aware you're just playing a part. Those props don't actually belong to you. So if something happens to one of the props, you're not emotionally affected at all, because deep inside your reality is it does not belong to you. And of course the other actors, you know they're not really related to you, and you also know they're not really the characters that they're playing. They're speaking lines. They might have lines of a villain, but underneath, you know that's not what they're really like off stage. You're very aware of the reality off stage, even while playing your part. So your feeling and emotional state are more connected to the reality off stage than what's going on in the play. Now let's say that you suddenly suffered amnesia, which meant you no longer have access to the reality off stage. All you know is what's happening on stage. That becomes your new reality. Suddenly you're very attached to the props. You actually think they're yours. Suddenly you think those fellow actors are the characters they're playing, the lines they're speaking, the actions they're performing, and relations. And suddenly you think you are the costume and the character of that costume. Imagine what will happen to the thoughts in your head. So to become quiet, in essence, means to remember and to come off stage in that state of remembrance. So many of the thoughts will naturally start to fade away if that off-stage reality comes back online. The things I called mine, they're not really mine. The story of the costume, it doesn't really capture the story of me. And what everyone else is doing is completely, on stage, is completely accurate to the part they're supposed to play on stage. I don't have to have any questions about that, and I know who they really are. So there's a complete, what we call, reframing. Reframing brings quiet into the mind. If it's honestly happening, this will not work intellectually. Doesn't matter how many PhDs you have, it will not. This isn't about being clever, it's about being honest. This reframing. Of course, the reframing really will only work if you believe it's true. Right? It's not meant to be a coping mechanism. Do I actually believe it's true? Do I actually believe, as Shakespeare said, we are all but actors on this world stage. There's more to us. Reframing brings quiet. So that's something that you can experiment with in the week, the days to come. If I can get into that place of quiet where I've taken off in my mind the costume, the character, I know I'm more than that, and I'm liberated from all the thoughts I had on the stage in that state of forgetting. Now I can begin what many call meditation, we call introversion. Now I can begin to remember who I really am. I'm free to experience who I really am. If I'm not this costume, what we call the body, if I'm not all those possessions and relations and different forms of status, those attachments, taking all the things away that I had connected to define myself on the stage, what's left? And this is where we enter the realm of peace. I, the actor, off stage. This amazing discovery. It's like discovering I'm a different species. I am a soul, a spiritual being. I'm using this body, this costume to express through. I can observe the hand. I can send commands to the hand to move. It's a wonder, but it's almost like I'm observing it. And you begin to feel that your sense of self starts to concentrate here in the field of vision. As I'm observing everything from this position of stillness. You know, I can observe the body, I can observe everything from this very beautiful neutral place. And the sense of self really concentrates here. Less and less sense of attachment to the body, as if the costume's becoming loose. It's not that I leave the body, I'm just not identifying with it. I'm not giving it that sense of this is me. Just like a driver in a car. I'll be aware there's me, the driver, and there's the car. I don't need to destroy or remove the car to have a sense of self. I'm just very aware I'm not the car. So similarly, I can use this body. I'm aware of it. I don't need to get rid of it. I don't need to abuse it or disrespect it. I'm just not it. I am separate. There's me, the observer. And that sense of self in the field of vision, the observer, starts to concentrate into a tiny point of existence. I actually don't need to have any physicality to exist. I can still think and feel and observe and experience and express. There does not need to be any physicality to me for those functions to happen. So I am this point of life, and I am eternal. So again, we're going to maybe challenge some beliefs in saying that. Eternal means because this body is not eternal, it is temporary. So this concept of rebirth, that I have some kind of story within me that I need to act out in this physical realm, and it actually extends beyond one body. So moving from one body, taking rebirth in another to play this story that's in me to express. As an actor, I know the personality of a costume, but what is my true personality or my true nature off stage? And as it turns out, it's all the things we cry out for. We actually are crying out for the things that we lost in ourselves. Top of the list is peace, number one cry on the planet. So my true nature, and as I genuinely start to connect to who I am, I, the soul, seated here in the center of the forehead behind this field of vision, I am a peaceful being. That's my true personality off stage. It's very simple. So again, not intellectual. Actually have to believe it and actually start to experience it, to remember it. That feeling of peace will come. And that quality of peace almost creates a pathway or bridge to other spiritual or timeless memories in the self. The idea that, okay, I'm here playing my part through the body, rebirth, that's interesting, but kind of suggests, just like the actor tends not to live at the theater, it's not their home. Perhaps this world, this physical realm, is not my home either. And what is my home? What makes me feel most secure, most safe, most connected to myself? Through centuries, what we found human beings doing when they want to really have a sense of connecting to themselves is they'll go into solitude. Silence as so deeply connected to our understanding of reconnecting with ourselves. And because our home, where we truly reside outside of the stage, is silence. A beautiful state of silence. And in that state of silence, I connect. I have true relationships, eternal relationships, an eternal relationship with myself, just peace. This eternal relationship with my fellow actors. They are just fellow actors. There's no value or judgment over any of them. And of course, most importantly, my eternal relationship with the eternal parent of all souls, the Supreme Soul, whom we remember as God. All of that becomes very vibrant in silence. Only in silence can I have a connection with these timeless memories in the soul. So in the little time left, I've gone over time, maybe we'll take a moment to see if you have any questions. Again, you can type in chat if you do. And if not, we will go into an experience. So I'll give you a moment or two. So let's experiment. So again, seated in a royal way, since this is Raj Yoga, royal yoga. I immediately become acutely aware of my own presence. A very caring vision towards the self. And I start to experiment with this awareness of being an actor wearing a costume. This costume of the body. And how much of myself I have invested in this costume of the body. It even extends beyond the body to all the relationships relative to this body, the possessions, even the actions and the status. As if I lost myself in the costume and the story of the costume. I start to feel a little bit of distance between this costume and me. But I'm also aware how deeply I have attached. And so I have patience. With whatever little space I can create. I start to emerge thoughts about the real me. I am a soul, an eternal spiritual being. I travel through time, playing a part. I use this body to express through, but I do not need it to exist. The body needs me. And before I completely lost myself in the story of this body, what am I really like? I, the soul. Concentrating my focus, this tiny point of life that is me, seated behind the eyes. And as I focus, it's like a key, unlocking ancient memories. A deep memory in the heart. The dignity of the self. The royalty of the self. The power of the self. The real me. I, the soul. Able to maintain such a stage of peace through that royalty, that dignity, that power. The pure, true me is so serene, undisturbed, not reactive, deeply caring but not reactive, very peaceful, very mature. There is a depth to I, the soul. And that reunion with the self creates a calm inside that carries me home, carries me into silence. The reunion with the self supports a reunion with my eternal parent, the one I belong to, the Supreme Soul, God, the one who never forgets who I am. And at the moment when I am ready to return to my true self, I seek out that one, knowing that is the only one who can help me to get there. The presence of God, the connection with God, that company brings me back to myself. The power of that relationship with God melts away what is not me and strengthens what is. And this is Raj Yoga, a reunion with the Supreme Soul in order to restore the royalty of the self. Om Shanti. Thank you so much for joining tonight. If there's any questions, please feel free to email us. We'll put the email address in the chat box. And as Nora reminded us in the experience session, Saturday is another opportunity to explore and experiment with these. There's experience and inner fitness. I think the theme is breathe. I could be wrong, but I think it's breathe this Saturday. And yes, we're adding another experience, meditation, Tuesdays at 6:45 on live stream YouTube. So more chance to experiment with that reunion with the self and the Supreme Soul. This is all about benefiting the self, care for the self. Big thank you for joining. Until we meet again online. Om Shanti.